Hi everybody, and welcome to Run Tall, the YouTube channel that is dedicated to all runners everywhere. I'm Tim, and I upload new videos every week that are all about running. This week, I'm going to be looking at two different daily trainers, one by Brooks, their Ghost 13, and one by Saucony, their Ride 13. We're going to take a close look at both of these shoes. There's a lot of similarities, but there are some pretty big differences as well to try to answer the question, which shoe should you buy? Now, if you want to skip ahead to just the parts of the video that you want to watch, I tried to make it pretty easy for you. If you open the description, you'll see that I laid out some chapters there. Simply click on the timestamp for the part of the video that you want to watch, and it'll take you right there. Before we get started, let me show you what these shoes look like to run in, and then when we get back, we'll try to answer that question, which shoe should you buy? So I had these shoes out on basically the identical run out at my local state park. You can see that when I was running in the Ghost 13 that it was a bit cool. It was about 30 degrees was the feels like temperature, and you could tell that there was a little bit of snow spitting out there. And I was wearing long pants and a quarter zip to run in just to help kind of ward off a little bit of that chill factor. While a week later, so a week further into what would be the fall coming winter months, I was running in the Saucony Ride 13, and you can see I was wearing shorts and a short sleeve shirt. So vastly different temperatures to run in, but the environment that I was running was still the same. That's the nature of Michigan. 30 degrees one day, 60 the next. What are you going to do? Anyway, so let's start talking about these shoes, and we'll look at some of the similarities and the differences. And I'm going to start with the cost. They cost the same. So it's $130 is the price tag for both of these shoes. And we'll take a look at the weight. Now, there's not a lot of weight difference. The Saucony Ride is a little bit heavier. So the Ghost 13 comes in at 9.8 ounces. Now, these weights and sizes are for a men's size 9, which is what I wear, or 277 grams, while the Saucony Ride weighs 10.1 ounces or 286 grams. So let's dive right in, and we'll begin by looking at the uppers on these two shoes. Now, this is where the majority of the similarities are going to lie within these two daily trainers. And we'll just look at the Saucony first. And you'll notice up there in the toe box, got lots of perforations. They describe their shoe as being form fit, And I think that's a pretty good description. I felt like it was form-fitting to me. And we'll follow that along to the side. You'll see it's got some 3D printed overlays. It's got their logo that kind of goes across the midsection of the shoe. And then we work our way around back to that heel counter area where it's got, a little bit of structure back there too. Now let's turn over and we'll look at the Brooks Ghost 13. And you know what? They look so much alike here. Again, perforations in the toe box, plenty of room in the toes, an area for your toes to feel comfortable in the shoe. Now, they describe their shoe as hugging your foot. And, I think that's pretty accurate. If you can think about maybe what it would feel like if you were an infant being swaddled in a blanket, that's kind of how it feels. It's really comfortable. And that's something that Brooks is really good at, and that's putting out some comfortable uppers. And we'll follow that along to the side of the shoe. Again, 3D plastic overlays along that midsection, including their logo and some structure back in the heel counter. So the uppers are nearly identical in their design and in the shape of the toe box. So I felt like both had adequate airflow. I wouldn't say that they're extremely breathable, but for the daily trainers, and I've had them out both in the cold and in some hotter weather, they've performed just fine. They're kind of that middle of the road in terms of breathability, but it was more than adequate to make me feel comfortable when I was out running in both shoes. Let's turn now and we'll look at the lacing system on both shoes. And you can see that they both have a traditional lace system here. Nothing complicated or complex. They just get the job done. They both have some plastic overlays both on top as well as underneath the neck cage area to give it some extra durability. The one thing that I will note that is different here are the laces that they send with the shoes. Now, Brooks sends a very traditional lace, which does just a fine job. Saucony included their round kind of puffy lace, which I have found to be a little bit stretchy, and I've really kind of come to appreciate. And here's why. Once you tie those laces, they seem to stay tied. They've got a little extra give to them, just kind of like a bungee cord almost, maybe not to that extreme, but it adds a little bit of comfort to the upper because there's a little extra give there if you need it. I guess that's part of their form fit structure that they have to the shoe. But most importantly, once you tie those laces, they stretch a little and then that stretch gives way once they've been cinched up. It seems to stay tied. And that I think is the most important. Now, I always double tie my shoes or always put that second knot in because nothing can spoil a run faster than if your shoes come untied and that ends up in, resulting in a fall or worse. You want to avoid that at all costs. So in this case, I think Saucony did a good job with those round puffy laces. It's taken me a little while to get used to. Now let's look at the tongue on these shoes. And you can see that they have about the equal amount of padding for both. The one notable difference is the Saucony Ride 13 does have a semi-gusseted tongue. But that being said, I didn't have any issues with the Ghost 13 having that tongue migrate. It laid flat on my foot. Both were comfortable. I didn't have any issues with either one. But if you enjoy a gusseted tongue, the Ride 13 might be the right shoe for you. Let's look at the padding around the heel collar as well as the tab of both of these shoes. And we'll start with the Saucony Ride first. And as we look at this, you notice that it's a pretty traditional padding system that they've used, and they're pretty generous with the amount that they included in these areas. And as you look at that heel tab, you'll notice that it has a slightly taller, Achilles heel flare. I wouldn't call it, a flare like Nike's would be, but, it's just slightly taller. I did find it to be comfortable on my Achilles tendon when I was out running. Now I'll take a look at the Brooks Ghost 13, and you can see that it's almost identical to the Saucony Ride and how that they went about padding those areas. Very traditional, pretty generous amount. I would say pretty equivalent to one another. And it does have a little bit of a notch in the heel tab of the shoe for your Achilles tendon, and that felt good. But again, that was a slightly more rounded in that area, where the Saucony Ride, as I pointed out, has just a slight Achilles heel flare. But both I found to be really comfortable. Now let's take a look at the heel counter on both of these shoes, and we're going to give it the pinch test. And you can see that, they're pretty identical. They both have a lot of structure in this area. It gets a little extra stability to the shoe. And by stability, I'm not talking about, the squishiness of the foam. So if you had a tall stack height, for example, that might be really soft underfoot, you can feel a little bit unstable. I'm talking about pronation, or in my case, overpronation, and the amount of structure in the heel oftentimes can help reduce that impact on my body. And so that's something that I do pay close attention to in both of these shoes. It's pretty identical. They're both pretty stout in the heel. And also, you notice that neither shoe has a pull tab to help you get the shoes on, but I didn't find that to be, inconvenient at all. Also, both shoes come with removable insoles. Saucony has their form fit. Brooks has their cushioned insole. It does add a little bit of comfort to your run experience. And I always appreciate, and I mentioned this several times in other videos before, when you can remove an insole. It just makes it easier to keep your shoes clean, especially if you're out running. Sometimes in inclement weather where the shoes get wet or dirty, it's nice to be able to bring them back, wash them, toss them in the dryer, dry them up before putting them back in your shoes. So I do appreciate having that removable insole. It's a little thing, but it means a lot to me. So now let's take a look at the midsole on both of these shoes, and this is really where the difference lies between these two daily trainers. We'll take a look at the Saucony Ride first, and it has a 32.5 millimeter stack height in the heel and a 24.5 millimeter stack height in the forefoot for an 8 millimeter drop from the heel to the toe, and their midsole is 100% PWRRUN foam. Now we're going to contrast that with how Brooks has designed their midsole. The Ghost has a 32 millimeter stack height in the heel and a 20 millimeter stack height in the forefoot for a 12 millimeter drop from the heel to the toe. So that's a 4 mil difference in offset. But the biggest difference of all is that they use two different kinds of foam in their midsole material. Now they're using a combination of their DNA Loft foam, which is their most soft cushioned foam, along with their Biomogo foam, and they co-mold this together so that it's a nice fluid feeling or natural feeling underfoot when you're out running. But the DNA Loft material, now that's going to run on the outside of your shoe. So it's running along this edge, down around, and it's going to wrap right around your heel. So this is all the DNA Loft material. On the inner side, or the medial side, or the arch side, they have their Biomogo foam. And so that's running on this part of the shoe down around through here. And that's a more stout foam material underfoot. And it's kind of interesting because that is a process that's pretty common in stability shoes. And while this is not a stability shoe, it's considered to be a neutral shoe, it does have a very stable feeling to it when you're out running. And I greatly appreciate that. So now let's flip these shoes over and we'll take a look at the outsoles and how they're protecting all of that midsole foam. And you can see that both shoes, they're almost identical in the placement of the rubber. They've got it around in the high abrasion areas in the heel and pretty much covered from that midfoot all the way up to the toe on both of them. They both have flex grooves in that toe area to give you a nice flexible feeling or natural feeling underfoot as you roll through your foot strike. And that was pretty much identical to me in the feeling when I was out running. The one difference between the two is the outsole rubber that they're using on the Ghost 13 is a bit thicker. And, from time to time, I seem to be picking up pebbles in those treads just because they are a little bit thicker and they tend to hold those. But, overall, it wasn't really a big deal at all. So let's kind of wrap things up with the performance of these shoes. They both performed really well. I found that they were a very natural feeling underfoot right through from my heel to my toe off. I felt very natural in my gait cycle in each of these shoes. Both have a nice flexible forefoot, which just kind of adds to that feeling or experience when I'm out running. The biggest difference is in the midsoles. With the Saucony Ride 13, that PWRRRUN foam, that's pretty stout. And you get a lot of energy return or bounce but it's not the most cushioned of rides that are available out there today. And it's more stout than the Ghost 13 is. Now, the Ghost 13, they have that DNA Loft material, as I mentioned, that runs along the outside of your shoe all the way around, covering in your heel area, so that, you know, whether you're a heel striker or a midfoot striker or even forefoot striker, you've got that soft DNA foam that you can land on. And I found that to be pretty darn comfortable, pretty soft and cushioned for my ride. So that's the biggest difference I felt between these two shoes, was simply the cushioning underfoot. Now, the Saucony Ride is a bit more responsive in terms of their midsole, but both of these are daily trainers and not necessarily going to be your tempo shoe or progression run shoe. So if you're looking for a shoe that's a little softer or a little more cushioned underfoot, then I think the Ghost 13 is probably going to be the better choice for you. But if you want just that consistent, smooth ride, then the Saucony Ride might be the right shoe for you. Hey, I appreciate you watching this video. I enjoyed making it for you. As always, run tall, run strong, be kind to one another. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.